banging every hit in Europe, you hear me?
Yeah, well, you tell them to pack light. Because they won't fucking be staying long.
Riding high.
Did he just hit me with a motorcycle? That's just disrespectful.
Hate the game.
I got you.
Until
The Killer's Game is the newest action flick about a one-man army to hit theaters. It's directed by J.J. Perry, and that one-man army is played by Dave Bautista. Dave plays an assassin named Joe Flood, and he is great at what he does. He goes out, he gets these assassin missions, and he always hits his target. He is basically the best assassin in all of Europe. But lately he's been having some medical issues, and these medical issues are headaches and double vision. So he goes and sees a bunch of doctors. They can't really figure it out, so they run a bunch of tests and they say, we'll get back to you. And at the advice of his boss, played by Ben Kingsley, tells him, hey, go out and live your life. Don't just focus on this assassin's game. And so he takes his boss's advice. He goes out into the world. He meets Maisie, played by Sofia Boutella. She's a dancer. They quickly fall in love with each other, and they start to live their lives together. He's loving his life at this point. He's great at his assassin's game, and he's also great at his relationship with Maisie. And you see this awesome montage that we'll talk about in a little bit between his assassin life and his relationship life. But then one day he gets a call from those doctors that did tests on him, and they tell him, hey, those test results came in, and you have a disease that's eating at your brain, and eventually you are going to completely shut down. And by the way, this is going to happen in just a couple of short weeks. And so Joe takes out an insurance policy on himself and then commits insurance fraud. Yeah, that's right. You didn't know this movie was also going to be about committing insurance fraud, but here we are. Because as you may or may not know, you cannot take an insurance policy out on yourself and then go eliminate yourself from the game of life, we'll say for YouTube, because what ends up happening is the insurance company won't pay it out. So Joe takes out this insurance policy for himself, and it's going to pay out to Maisie, but he needs somebody else to take him out of the game of life. And so he puts a hit on himself. And so all of these assassins around Europe now feel like they have a clean shot at Joe Flood because there is a hit on him, and they're all ready to take him out of this game. However, the last piece that I will give you to the synopsis is that right before the clock starts on the hit job for Joe Flood, he gets a call from the doctors, and the doctors say, hey, we made a huge mistake. You don't have this issue, this brain problem. You just maybe need glasses. That's it. So you're good. You get to live a long life. And he realizes in that moment that all of the hitmen are coming for him. And he now has to defend himself to stay alive. And that is the best synopsis that I can give you. It was quite a play-by-play of the entire first act, but I felt like you needed all of that information to jump into the rest of my review. So if that sounds like an interesting premise to you, if that sounds like a fun setup to you, well, you should go check this movie out. It is playing in theaters now. Let's jump into my positives and some of my negatives. First positive I have is Dave Bautista has truly come a long way from his WWE wrestling days. For those of you who may not know, Dave Bautista was just Batista in the WWE, and one of my favorites growing up because he was basically your main good guy on SmackDown, going for that World Heavyweight Championship. First, he has retired from the WWE, gone full-time into acting. Now, a lot of people may know him as Drax the Destroyer from the Guardians of the Galaxy films, but he's popped up in several other movies and had several other full movies of his own, including this one, The Killer's Game, and I just think that his acting has seriously improved. He may be the most improved actor from the WWE. I mean, obviously your big stars are The Rock and John Cena, but so much of the time The Rock is just The Rock, and John Cena has really laid into the comedy or the self-deprecating humor comedy roles, but Batista has just gone legit tough guy, and he's done a damn good job with it. So that's my first positive of this film, is just seeing Dave Bautista really embrace that actor's role. My next positive is that montage scene that I touched on a little bit earlier in this review, but in that montage scene, it really sets the tone for the rest of the film because you get to see him go on this assassin mission at the beginning of the movie and it's all action. You get to go see him go on a date with Maisie and it's all romance story, right? But then you have this montage scene where he's doing these assassin missions and maybe he'll go to snap somebody's neck, and as he does that, the camera will switch switch and he's twirling Maisie on the dance floor somewhere, or he'll go after somebody and he's shooting at them and the next thing you know, he's with her at a dinner table. And I really liked that back and forth that they did in that montage scene. It really worked for me, and it really set the tone for how crazy some of the violence was going to be in this film, while also staying focused on that relationship between Joe and Maisie. My final positive for this film is going to be those action scenes. If you have an action movie that I'm going to give a positive review for, it's got to have some badass action scenes, and this movie seriously delivers. It delivers throughout, but mostly at the end in this castle scene. There's just some great action moments throughout, but what makes these action scenes so much fun and sort of stand out is that all of these different assassins have their own different, unique fighting styles. So you'll have some assassins show up and it's just swordplay and knives, and then you'll have another assassin show up and it's all bombs, or you'll have another assassin show up who's also a dancer, and so this guy listens to music while he's dancing around fighting, but it's actually a really fun scene. And then you've got some mercenaries that show up and they're all bullets and guns, and so you get to see all of these different fighting styles going up against Joe in this movie, and it makes it so much fun because it never feels like you're watching the exact same action scene over and over and over, which a lot of action movies fall into. You'll have an action movie set in New York City, and so everybody's got guns, and then there'll be a few hand-to-hand combat fights. But what's cool about this is that every unique assassin group comes with their own unique flavor, and I thought that was done really well. That'll lead me to my negatives. My first negative has to do with Terry Crews' character. Terry Crews is in this movie, and I think he does a good job with his acting. However, with Terry Crews' character comes a lot of the comedic relief for this film, and I just didn't really need that. This movie was very straightforward, had a very heavy plot to it. A guy thinks he's dying, so he puts a hit on himself to take care of the love of his life. Like, that's a heavy story. And then Terry Crews comes in as this assassin who is basically going to be some of the comedic relief throughout the rest of the film. And again, I just didn't need it. Maybe it worked for other people. It didn't really work for me. You've got Terry Crews kind of going through this movie after Joe Flood, but he's the assassin sort of on the outside looking in. He's watching all these other assassins fail, and he's trying to figure it out along the way. He's got this driver in the movie that I won't get into here because I feel like it would be spoilery why he's got a driver, but he's got this driver in the movie, and the guy is an idiot and just sort of lends itself to that dumb comedy, and I feel like the dumb comedy holds this movie back a little. I would have wished this movie stayed a more straightforward action flick than trying to dip into comedy action flick. Which leads me to another negative, and that negative is that some of the action scenes get a bit repetitive. Now, the fighting styles, something I praised this movie for, I thought those worked every single time. It was cool seeing him go up against a couple of Scottish bros. It was cool seeing him go up against a couple of Asian people. It was cool seeing him going up against these American mercenaries. So you've got all these different groups of people that he's going up against. But I did find one thing repetitive in those scenes, in that most of these groups, people were related to each other. So you'd have these sibling assassins come in, whether it was 4 of them, 2 of them, 3 of them, whatever the case may be, you'd have these sibling assassins come in and they'd fight him, and one thing would lead to another. Joe would eliminate one of them, and they would then get upset and go, "That's my brother," or "That's my sister, how could you?" And it's like, well, you're assassins and you're trying to kill this guy, so he killed one of you. What do you want? What? And it just, like, the first time that happened, I was like, well, that's a dumb thing to get upset about. You're literally assassins trying to kill someone, and he killed one of you. But you're upset now that it's your sibling. Okay, I'll let that go. But then it happens again and again and a 4th time, and I'm like, all right, that's getting a bit repetitive. Like, I feel like the writers got a little bit lazy in that regard, because they were like, okay, well, these 2 are going to be siblings, and they're going to go in, he's going to kill this one, and they're going to be like, oh, I can't believe you did that to my brother. And then these 2 are going to go in, and they're going to be sisters, and they're going to be like, I can't believe you did that to my sister. And you know what I mean? It's just like, oh my goodness, okay, could you come up with one other angle at least for these assassin groups? Because it's getting really irritating that you're ending these fight scenes, and it's not all the fight scenes, but it's most of them. You're ending these fight scenes with, I can't believe you did that to my sibling or my partner or my loved one. It's like, you can't believe that? You're going to fight to the death and you can't believe that? It just got a bit repetitive. That'll lead me to my last negative of this movie. I thought the movie moved at a good pace for most of the film. It had a good bit of setup at the beginning, but that setup was necessary, and I didn't feel like it dragged at all. I thought the second act of this film was action-packed and a lot going on with it. But the third act, when they're trying to tie it all up together, the movie moves to this weird confession scene that's played as laughs, and it moves to this wedding ceremony, also played as laughs, during the epic third act finale with all of of these battles. And I didn't think that was necessary. I felt like that actually dragged the movie down a bit. Now, earlier I talked about how Terry Crews sort of brought down the movie for me because it was like, oh, hey, we got to pump in all this comedic stuff. Well, this kind of goes to that point because in the third act, you've got all these battles going on. You're like, all right, where is this going to go next? You got all these mercenaries coming in and they're like, all right, we're going to stop for 10 minutes. Full 10 minutes here, and we're going to do a confession scene. It's going to be played for laughs, and it's funny, right? Because he's confessing to all these horrible crimes, and now he's going to get married in the middle of all these battles, and that just didn't work for me. For me, it really dragged down that third act. Overall, guys, I had a really good time with The Killer's Game. It is a film that I would recommend to pretty much everyone if you're an action fan. I think that if you like bloody, violent action movies, then this movie will be for you. And if that's not your style genre movie, maybe skip this one. Now, would I recommend this movie in a theater or at home? Honestly, I think you'd have just as much fun either way. So if you've got the time to check it out in theaters, maybe go support this movie by throwing some money at it. But I think you'd have just as much fun if you're streaming it at home. It's nothing that you're going to be like, oh my God, movie of the year. I mean, maybe it will be, but it wasn't for me. But those are just my opinions because that's my review for The Killer's Game. Guys, if you had a chance to check out this movie yet, if you have, let me know in the comment section down below whether we agree or disagree on some things. Maybe this isn't really your style movie, but some of the things I mentioned in this review make you want to see it. I would love to know if that's the case. And finally, guys, if you like this video and you want to check out other content on my channel, well, don't forget to hit that like button because it helps the video, it helps the channel, and helps me right here. Thanks for watching. I'll see you next time. All right, guys, we get to the end of my The Killer's Game review, and honestly, I had a great time with this movie. It is a movie that I will rewatch eventually because it's a fun premise. Like, it's just an assassin puts a hit on himself, realizes he screwed up, and now has to kill everybody. And there's just something fun about that action premise. Not a movie I would run out to find on Blu-ray and throw on my shelves back there, but a movie that I would eventually add to those shelves if I get the chance. With all that said, though, guys, if you like this video and you want to check out other content on my channel, well, I've got all of the best and worst from 2024 right there, and I've got all of my 2024 movie reviews right there.